Everyone, welcome to another episode of TBN Special. I'm Habib Rahman, your host today with you. I have somebody special. We're going to get to him in a moment, but let me give you a little bit of intro about him. He was born and raised in Brooklyn, and he's a proud son of a teacher. Believe it or not, he's a record salesman. Okay. After attending his junior school, PS 185, and then junior school McKinley, he went to Xavier High School, and he studied journalism in college before he started his career as a professional musician. His band released several albums. He toured the world, performing in over 50 countries across the 5 continents. He's a believer in the importance of making the government work efficiently, which we are having serious doubt in today's world, and making life easier for working class and middle class families. He was first elected in 2017 from a really crowded field of 10 candidates to Southwest Brooklyn. Later, when he was working in a New York City radio station, he got involved in union organizing, and he fought to recover unpaid wages for his co-workers. He's no other than Justin Brannan. Thank you for making time and coming here. We have a lot of questions, many questions, especially with the current administration. I'm talking about at the federal level, Trump and his administration, creating a whole lot of chaos. Every 5 minutes, you have a breaking news coming out of, Washington, D.C.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And in this atmosphere, we have you running for New York City Comptroller. So first thing first is for people who are seeing you for the first time, and first time they're hearing a Comptroller position, what is it? What do they do? Why is it so important?
Sure. The easiest way, I think, to explain it is basically if the mayor of the city is the CEO, then the controller is the CFO, right? It's your job as controller to oversee how tax dollars are spent and oversee the pension funds, right? The city pension fund system is almost $300 billion. If you work for the city, if you're currently a city employee and you're hoping to retire one day like I am, you want to make sure that you have a nice, stable retirement savings, and growing and protecting the pension funds is a top priority. Also, the controller audits the city agencies to ensure that you root out waste and corruption and fraud and inefficiency. If you see that agencies are wasting money, that money could be better spent somewhere else, it's your job as controller to call that out. And, I currently serve as chair of the finance committee in the city council.
Right.
So I've overseen this massive city budget, the $115 billion budget. It's my job to oversee negotiations on the budget for the past 3.5 years. And I think that experience has prepared me to be the next best controller. Yeah.
So there are a lot of questions about budget, especially at the federal level. We are hearing that they'll be reducing budget for New York State, which is going to affect anything and everything. So I'm going to hear more from you. But let me start with a general question. You are progressive, from what I know, right? And the current poll shows that the progressives are doing better among the Democrats. We have Zohran Mamdani, who was here last week. He is doing well in the polls, head to head with Andrew Cuomo. We'll see who comes out winner. However, if you were to compare with Mamdani, how would you compare yourself with him, and how would you separate your position from his position?
I think the term progressive means different things to different people. For me, I'm a Democrat. I don't care what you call me.
Right.
I'm a Democrat.
Okay.
You can call me a progressive Democrat. I don't care what you call me. I see the world in that every day I wake up and say to myself, how can I make life better for everyday working people? How can I make sure that the decisions I make today are going to help you and your family, working people, the immigrant community, the folks that came here to build a better life, the folks that are working really hard? I think a lot about, in a city as rich as New York City, with a budget as big as ours, people shouldn't be struggling so hard to get by. So I see the world through that lens, that I want to make life easier for working people, because, sometimes you'll hear these stories that they'll say, oh, the rich people are fleeing New York City. It's not true. Working families are fleeing New York City because they can't afford to live here.
I think I agree with you on this one. The middle, they can't afford.
Yeah.
A middle class, lower middle class, forget about
middle class, working class are getting squeezed out.
Right. And it's the richers who are coming in and making it worse. Yes. Because it's getting more and more expensive.
And that gap, the gap between the rich and the poor gets wider and wider and wider, and we're all going to fall in that gap. And that's what I'm trying to prevent. Okay.
These all things are very different from what we hear from the Republicans. And obviously, we all know. While did you clarify that you actually, it doesn't really matter, you are a Democrat. But when people hear about progressive Democrats, on paper, they look great and good, right? But in reality, we are seeing the law and order in New York City, especially in subways, not improving, to say the least. What is your position in this regard? Because it affects our everyday life.
Sure. I mean, look, I think the government has two main responsibilities. Number one, the government is there to keep people safe. And number two, the government is there to level the playing field so that everyone has the same access to opportunity as everybody else. I believe that I support the local cops. I support the NYPD. I think it's important to note, though, that we can never more cops our way out of every problem. We also need investments in healthcare and schools, and education, access to jobs and employment. The neighborhoods that I've seen that are the safest neighborhoods are not necessarily the neighborhoods that have the most cops. They're the neighborhoods that have the best parks, the best schools, the best libraries, the best small businesses. True. So I think you have to take a holistic approach. You need the police, and when you call 911, people want the cops to come and act professional. Right. But the cops, you got to think about this. Police signed up. If I became a cop, my job, what I want to do is catch bad guys. All right. I didn't sign up to become a cop to deal with someone who's experiencing homelessness. I didn't become a cop to deal with someone who's having dealing with unchecked mental illness. I didn't become a cop to deal with a domestic dispute, that a nonviolent. Right. That's not my training. My training is make people feel safe, catch bad guys. So we have to let the cops do their job. And do the job they signed up to do. But we also have to make sure that we are investing in our communities so that our communities have what they need to prevent crime from happening in the first place. I represent Coney Island. There is gun violence in Coney Island. A lot of it happens, by young kids. True. And a lot of the kids that are doing the shooting, the kid doing the shooting and the unfortunate victim of the shooting, they never have jobs, either of them, right? So there's a common denominator there that people need opportunity. They need access to opportunity, they need education, they need access to jobs, because that's what's driving crime. And just throwing more cops at that problem is not going to fix it. We need cops, but we can't fix all of this with more cops.
So what would be the root cause that you would identify? You would identify saying that, hey, listen, it's not the lack of cops, it's the other thing.
Sure,
what is that
it's
other?
Not right. So safety comes down to, it's not the lack of cops, it's the lack of access to jobs, lack of access to education, lack of access to housing, lack of access to healthcare, all the things that build that up, that lead people to committing crimes because they feel they have nowhere else to turn. So you have to fix all of that as well. You can't just throw more cops at it without going after the root causes of the problem.
Right. So you mentioned if you are elected, you will be the CFO of New York City. I hope that happens.
Me too.
That has a lot to do with budget, dollars, right? We have the state funding and we have federal fundings. Now, New York especially faces chronic budget issues, as you know, right? And some places we overshoot the budget, allowed budget, such as MTA projects, or roads and highways and tunnels and whatnot, right? So, especially in Trump has declined to support some of the projects in New York, right? How would you make New York a better place? Because I was looking at your agendas and issues that you cover in your election site. You seem to focus on more affordable housing facilities for New Yorker. So explain to me, please.
Sure. I mean, look, the New York City budget relies on almost 10% of funding from the federal government. There is not a city in this country that can survive without that funding. We rely on that funding for food benefits, for housing costs, for public schools, A lot of that money coming from Washington, D.C. By the way, that's our tax dollars that we send to Washington, and we expect it to come back to us, to New York City, because New York City sends a lot of money to Washington. It's important in this moment, I think, to look after that city budget, to build a firewall around our budget so we can take care of our most vulnerable. Because what I'm worried about right now is, especially in our immigrant communities who are under attack by Donald Trump, people who feel afraid to send their kids to school, people are afraid to go to work, because Donald Trump, it's all on purpose. He's trying to scare people. So I think it's important for politicians like me in New York City, with such a large immigrant population, with almost half of New Yorkers who are on Medicaid, who rely on these federal services, to stand up and fight, and to make sure that that money in our city budget is actually going to the places, making those targeted investments, going to the places that need it most.
I'm going to come back to that, because this is an important issue that touches almost half of the population,
yes.
right? And people who retire, people, elderly people who are relied on Medicaid and Medicare. Now, because the big beautiful bill, as Trump says, it's not beautiful.
No, it's very
it's
ugly.
Big, but it's not beautiful. Right. It's ugly. We're going to come back to you. Now, let me ask you this. You said about constructions and making New York City better.
Yep.
And obviously, you're going to run into the construction lobby, one of the strongest lobbies, right? But we know Andrew Cuomo is getting their support. Many people are asking that, have a doubt that, can you really implement your agendas of construct without the backing of the lobby of the construction?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's important to, we need to build more housing in this city. We need to build more housing that New Yorkers can actually afford, that working families can afford. And the way that you get that done is by bringing everybody to the table, bringing the unions, the real estate industry, the developers to say, look, we want to build market rate housing also. We need housing in all income levels, but we have to make sure that we're building housing that middle class, working class New Yorkers can actually afford. And I've always been someone, look, I represent a district that is very purple, right? You have Democrats and Republicans. I've had a lot of tough general elections where I've had to beat back Republicans. In the city of New York, most Democrats, if you win the primary, it's game over. Mm-hmm. Where I'm from, November is where the real fight is in the general election. So I'm a consensus builder. I know how to bring people together, bring people around a table to share that common goal and get things done.
Okay. So since you mentioned work together towards the common goal. Right now, the country is divided. Mm-hmm. I mean, polarized at its best, if you want to say. Now, one of the key issues that Republicans and the Trump administration is pointing out, that law and order. Mm-hmm. Our country has become dangerous place because we are being invaded by the Latin Americans and gang members. Right. And robbers and looters, and these are dangerous people. So where do you stand in terms of, because in New York City, we do see the spike in crimes. It is true. No denial of this. This is the reality in the ground, or on the ground. Now, how do you actually tell people what is your stand when it comes to this harsh words that's coming out of Trump administration? Yeah. Where do you stand on that one? And really, what really matters?
I think it's funny that Donald Trump talks so much about law and order, because he's breaking laws all over the place. So it often feels like rules for thee and not for me. Yeah. Right. Donald Trump and his whole crew of people, they're tanking the stock market. They're betting that the stock market is going to go down. They're doing better when it goes up. They talk about law and order. The people sometimes who scream the loudest about law and order are the ones that are breaking the law.
Right.
So I think it's important now to say this. Republicans, when they fight on behalf of themselves and on behalf of billionaires.
Of course.
When Democrats fight, we fight on behalf of the working class and the immigrants and the new Americans. And that's who I am too as a local elected official.
Right.
So I think it's important to say, look, I always say, I don't care if you've been in New York since birth or since breakfast.
Right.
You're a New Yorker, and it's our job to take care of you.
Right.
We want you to come here and follow the laws. Look, let's be real. Both parties have kicked the can down the road so many decades on immigration reform. Absolutely. That the system is so broken now. Yeah. Now, a lot of people say, oh, when my family came, yeah, when your family came, maybe in that snapshot in time, the immigration system was working. But guess what? If it wasn't working, your family is going to come here however the heck they're going to come here because they want to build a better life.
Sure.
So just because maybe when your family came here, things were working for that half a minute, that doesn't mean anything, because people are coming to the United States in search of a better life. We want them to be part of our community. We want them to contribute to our community.
Right.
New York City could not exist without the immigrant community. Let's be real, right? When Mayor Adams came out and said that the migrant crisis was going to bankrupt the city, I said, no, migrant crisis is not going to bankrupt the city. Mass deportations would bankrupt the city because we rely on the immigrant community for our city.
You know, the way Republicans are making this argument that these are the root issues, these are the issues that the illegal immigration are spiking up the crimes, are the people are causing issues. And if we can deport all of them, we will have a better society.
It's just
a better America.
Yeah, that's
right.
I mean, that's just not who we are.
Okay, so and in the meantime, we are also pushing misinformation on wrong narratives.
Yes,
we are bringing white Afrikaners from South Africa.
Oh yeah, that was
right.
Yeah.
So as if they are persecuting
and it's all done on purpose, right?
Okay. What's the purpose? Do you think?
So the purpose they do is this: they say, okay, let's take Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris.
Of course.
Okay. The price of eggs, the price of groceries, right? Explaining the economy is very, very hard. Okay, explaining to someone how the economy works, it's not easy. Okay. Right. When you go to the grocery store and you say, oh my God, the price of eggs is so expensive, I can't afford to buy eggs and milk and bread for my family. When the Democrats say to you, well, the economy is booming, Wall Street's doing great, just deal with it. The Republicans said, yeah, you know why your eggs are too expensive? Because of the migrants, which was a bunch of baloney. It had nothing to do, the price of groceries going up had nothing to do with the migrant crisis. But for the average voter who isn't super plugged in, who's feeling that pain in their family on a daily basis, they felt like the Democrats had no answer. Whereas the Republicans, at least they gave you someone to blame. It was wrong and divisive and hateful and xenophobic, but they gave you something. It's this is what I always say. When something is hard to explain, it's easier just to blame somebody.
Right.
If I can't explain why Wall Street is doing great and everyone's telling me the economy is booming, but my groceries are 3 times as much as they used to be, no one can explain that. When I go to the Republican Party, they say, yes, sir, you know why your eggs are too expensive? Blame that guy over there. It's just a human nature that for some people, it's easier just to blame someone else for my pain than to understand why it's so complex.
Right. I'm going to, turn this discussion into a little bit meaningful. It's easy to blame.
Yes.
It's your fault.
Right.
Right.
It absolves you from all.
Correct.
Yes.
You are going to be, hopefully soon, the CFO of New York City.
Right.
You have to fix issues.
Yes.
You will have a whole lot of issues, especially with the current administration. I'm not going to say corruption, but we have allegations.
Yes.
So with the current mayor, I'm talking about, of course, Eric Adams. What's your opinion on that? What do you think? Because it's kind of like a rampant issues in some cases. In some cases, it's becoming a trend. At the top of the administration, Donald Trump, accepting a $500 million Air Force One from a foreign government, which he can't do without congressional approval. And then you have the New York City mayor who's accepting gifts and money.
There's a lot of similarities there.
So you see the trend.
Unfortunately, I do.
Okay. What would you do?
So, I mean, look, I think it's important to say this. The government is supposed to be so that the person that has the least amount of access has just as much as access as the mayor's best friend. That's how the government is supposed to work. It's supposed to be that if you don't know anybody, you're not plugged in, you're not connected, you're not rich, you don't have the right contacts, you should still be able to get the same delivery of services as the rich guy who's friends with the mayor and with City Hall. We're not seeing that now. We're seeing the White House is for sale, and we've seen that City Hall is for sale. And the corruption there and the mistrust that breeds in people, people start questioning everything then. If they can't trust their government, now they start treating people differently. They start voting differently, the way they act, the way they think about things. That is the erosion of our democracy, that the very institutions that we hold dear and that we've always relied on, all of this mistrust breeds more mistrust, and people start questioning how they feel about everything, about their churches, about their schools, and it's very dangerous.
Okay, so let's come to your election. Why would people who are listening, right? Why would somebody vote for you? I want you to tell us the why part really loud and clear, so we all understand.
Sure. So look, I come from Southern Brooklyn. I represent a large Muslim community in Southern Brooklyn, a very diverse community from Bay Ridge all the way to Coney Island. It's a purple district, so I've had to work with Democrats and Republicans, try to build consensus to push things forward. This moment, I believe, calls for a fighter. This moment calls for someone who knows the budget like the back of their hand, who for the past 3.5 years has fought like hell to make sure the money gets back into the communities that need it most, and that's someone who's going to stand up and fight for Donald Trump, against Donald Trump. Right now, you need someone who's got the experience, but also the guts to fight back for our immigrant communities and for our most vulnerable. And that's who I've been my whole career. And that's why I'm running for controller, because I believe in the richest city in the world, you shouldn't be struggling so hard to get by. With a budget that's north of $115 billion, with a pension fund that's almost $300 billion, people shouldn't be working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. Cops, first responders, teachers, nurses, people that put their lives on the line for this city shouldn't have to work 2 jobs just to pay the rent. It's got to change. And I believe the sharpest tool we have to bring down the cost of living and to make life easier for working people is that $115 billion city budget.
I got more questions that you are a proponent of. I'm going to go to those questions. And I also have question on a little bit of international level, especially what's happening in Gaza and Israel. Divest from those investment. Where is your stand, and how do you plan to do this? But we have to take a break.
Great.
Please don't go anywhere. We're coming back with more questions, more important questions that you should hear from Justin Brannan. Welcome back to TBN Special. I'm Habib Rahman with you, and I have Justin Brannan, who's running for New York City Comptroller position, and the election is
June 24th.
June 24th, just like before the break, we were talking about. One important issue, I want to go back to some of the things that you spoke about, that you're pushing, keeping New York safe.
Yep.
I'm going to come back to that. You're saying the cost of living in New York is very high. It's not affordable. I want to know what you are planning to do about that. Divesting New York City pension from Tesla. I'm going to come to, but so when it comes to divesting, I want to know, where do you stand on a hot issue? And you don't have to answer if you don't feel comfortable. With the current environment in the Middle East, especially Gaza and Israel, some is calling it's a genocide, it's ethnic cleansing. I don't want you to take a stand on this, but do you plan to divest with some of the investment from the Israeli government that's done from New York City?
So, sure. I mean,
and where do you stand?
Sure. I don't support BDS. I've never supported BDS. I have family that lives in Tel Aviv, so it's personal to me as well. I also represent a very large Muslim community. I represent the largest Muslim community in the state, in Southern Brooklyn. I've called for a ceasefire. I believe all New York City politicians should be calling for a ceasefire. If you don't call for a ceasefire, then I assume that means you just want more bloodshed and violence, which is horrible.
Right.
Look, as a local politician, I don't have the power to make things better 5,000 miles away in Gaza, but I do have the power not to make things worse here in the city of New York.
Correct.
And I believe in this moment, we should be bringing people together.
Right.
Bringing people together around their shared humanity. We have Jewish New Yorkers who are scared to death. We have Muslim New Yorkers that are scared to death. I represent a huge Palestinian population. I immediately called for the release of the hostages. I condemned Hamas, and I said we need a ceasefire. We have to stop the violence and the war. I don't believe, though, in playing politics with people's money, so I'm not going to say that I'm going to divest from this or that. I need to win first and understand what the investments are before I fully appreciate that. Yeah, but in this moment, we've got to bring down the temperature.
So going back to, for this bloodshed to stop, this ethnic cleansing, many calling, or genocide, has to stop. But the first thing you are saying, the ceasefire has to be in place in order for it to move forward to any other step.
You got to release the hostages, and you have to have a ceasefire.
All right. So let's come back to divesting New York City pension from Tesla.
Sure.
Why Tesla? Why specifically?
Okay. So most people might not know, but the city of New York has over $1 billion invested in Tesla. Now, I got no problem with Teslas. I have friends who drive Teslas. I own an electric car. I don't have a Tesla, but I have an electric car.
You have an EV.
I love not having to buy gas. I don't like oil and gas. I don't want to contribute to the end of our world.
The pollutions and stuff,
So I have an electric car. Look, Elon Musk spends his days trying to screw over New Yorkers.
Yes.
He's coming after Medicaid. He's coming after the 9/11 Health Fund. He's coming after Social Security and veterans benefits. The city of New York, we should not have a dime invested in Tesla if he's going to continue to act this way. If he stops this nonsense, then we can have a conversation. But we have to be willing to stand up as a city and say, look, if you're going to attack, I don't want to have Tesla invested in pension funds that's supposed to support seniors while Elon Musk spends his days trying to attack seniors.
Taking away the Medicare.
Yes,
Medicaid,
it's insane.
The current bill, if passes in Senate.
Oh my, it would be a disaster. Disaster. New York City is almost 50% of New Yorkers are on Medicaid.
Would you believe some of the Republicans are calling for even steeper cuts?
That's insane.
I mean, it's insane.
Insane.
And the people who needs it most, elderly.
Yes.
People who are on...
And P.S., even if you voted for Donald Trump, you will still be impacted by this. It's not like, well, I voted for Donald Trump, so I'll still keep my Medicaid.
No, it doesn't work that way. It's just across the board.
And what's sad and scary is that policies like this hurt the poor first and worst.
Okay, now let's come back to New York City, where we live. Now, tackling the absurd cost of living. Now, the cost of living gradually going up for especially the last 4 or 5 years. And we haven't felt the tariff impact as of yet, but people and the economists are saying it is just a matter of time. So it's going to go up even faster, even higher. The wage growth will not be enough to catch up with the, the gap. How do you make it, how do you plan to make it more affordable for New Yorkers?
So this is a perfect moment where the government needs to step up, right? When you see costs going up and wages not keeping pace with the cost of living, government needs to step in places where we can do things better, where we see that the free market is not working. That's where you need government intervention. One of the areas is building more affordable housing. Another area I believe is childcare. You're seeing now that you're hearing working families, immigrant families who are considering leaving New York City because it's easier to rent somewhere else. It's easier to start a business somewhere else. It's easier to afford childcare somewhere else. We're losing working families and we need to keep them in the city. And I believe the way that we do that is by government intervention, that the government needs to step in where the free market has failed.
Okay, so you just mentioned about the child health care. In your agendas, you want to create a first in the nation universal child care system. Please explain.
So my idea would take pension investments to invest. It's basically a real estate investment to create child care centers in the city of New York that would be run by the city. And then we would get a return on that investment as a real estate investment, the same way that currently the pension funds invest in real estate. I think it's a win-win. What we're seeing now is the child care providers are not getting paid enough, and the parents and the families are saying it's too expensive. So there's a problem there, right? Where the parents are paying too much, but the providers are saying, I can't afford to live on this. That's where the government needs to step in to make that right.
Okay, so that's what you're calling the national universal child care.
That's right.
Now, you briefly touched on this, the housing. We need to create more housing for New York City workers. If we could dig deep a little bit, how, when, and what it takes to get
Sure. So you hear a lot about, people will say the husband and wife, the wife's a teacher and the husband is a cop or a firefighter, right? It's like that perfect, the typical,
atypical,
right?
Yes.
The fact is that family, the cop and the teacher, they can't afford to live here.
Of course.
And some of them have to live here, right? Because they're mandated by law that they have to live in the city of New York, but they can't afford to. So we have to build housing that meets the moment. And I think by building housing for city workers and for folks that make around that income level, we just have a better city. And P.S., if we're saving money on childcare, if you're saving a family $10,000 to $30,000 a year on childcare, that's money that stays in their pocket, goes back into the economy. It's a win-win.
It's a cycle.
Yes.
It's a cycle. Now, how do you plan to get that funding our budget for building more affordable housing?
So you have to, the main responsibility of the controller then is working with the trustees to say, look, I have this investment idea, and I believe that we can get at least a 7% return on the investment. It's mandated by law that you have to at least get 7%.
Okay.
So if I can make the case that we can invest in the creation of affordable housing, and we can invest in universal childcare, and still get a great return for our retirees, then we'll do it.
Okay. So there's one thing caught my eyes when I was going through your agendas and stuff. It's catchy. It says no procurement, no peace. Okay. So what do you mean by procurement reform?
Sure.
And how the corruption comes into the picture?
Oh my goodness. Explain. Okay. So what you have now is you have a lot of nonprofit organizations that do amazing work, but a lot of these nonprofits are waiting months, if not years, to get paid for work that they already did. Meanwhile, if you're friends and family with City Hall and with the Adams administration, you get paid like that. While other guys are waiting months to get paid millions and millions of dollars. The whole system needs to be reformed. The fact is, the money is just sitting there. The city does not have a cash flow problem. The money that is owed to these nonprofits is just sitting on a desk. We actually have to commit ourselves to deploying this money back to the nonprofits that have done this work. Now, I'm talking about nonprofits that help house the homeless, help feed the hungry, help teach our kids, help do arts instruction after school. A lot of this is like life-saving, important work.
They don't sound like. They sound like as if, oh, what if I don't have arts?
But it's crucial. It's essential. And the city needs to pay the same way that you and I have to pay our bills on time, the city's got to pay their bills on time.
Right. I want to touch on the student issues and CUNY.
Sure.
Expanding your opportunities through investment in CUNY.
Yep.
What are those investments that we are talking about?
I mean, look.
And I'm a CUNY product.
Right on.
So are you.
Yep.
All right. So we take a lot of pride on CUNY.
Sure.
It helped me a lot.
Right.
Right. So what are those investments?
Sure. So look, CUNY is really, I believe, the path to the middle class. It's given economic opportunity to so many students.
Right.
And for whatever reason, the past 3.5 years with this Mayor Adams, we've had to fight him tooth and nail to make investments in CUNY, which doesn't make any sense because you see support for CUNY that goes across the political spectrum, right? Republicans, Democrats, everybody agrees CUNY's great. It's a game changer.
Of course.
It's a way to take working class people, immigrant families, and give them a pathway to the middle class through that educational opportunity. It's just a no-brainer. And we have to double down on our investments in CUNY.
So when you talk about investment, what kind of investment you're talking about? Paying the teachers higher salaries?
Everything. Making sure the teachers have what they need, making sure that they're paid a fair wage so that we retain these great CUNY teachers, making sure the classrooms are fully funded, and making sure that some of these crucial programs that bring in more students and give that opportunity are out there. We want to get to a place where CUNY is completely free.
Do you agree with what's happening with MIT and Harvard with the Trump administration?
This is more of, you can't have policies set just because one person believes a certain thing. That's not how our democracy works.
We have a framework, which is the Constitution.
Yes.
And you can't go around and impose your own thoughts.
We don't have kings in this country.
Can you say that again? I mean, that is true.
Yes.
Look, the Constitution was written in such a way, it's not an infallible piece of document. No. You can change it.
But it was set up to block people from acting like kings.
Of course, I totally agree. Yeah. Many who are watching will agree. But it also gives you the room to make adjustments.
Yes.
That's why we have amendments.
Yes.
Need be, there could be more amendments, but there's no place for a king.
That's right.
Right? And he's taking it on with Harvard. It's
crazy.
Really crazy and sad. I want to talk about one thing that affects almost every homeowner in New York City. Your tax system. You're calling the current New York City's property tax is a broken property tax system.
It's the worst.
Explain to me why it's broken and what you intend to do.
Sure. So the property tax system as it stands today was set up back in 1981. New York City was a very different place in 1981. Neighborhoods that back in 1981, no one wanted to live in or they were considered unsafe are now some of the most desirable neighborhoods in the city. A lot of it due to gentrification, which is a whole other conversation. But the fact is right now, working middle class homeowners are subsidizing because they're paying more than folks that live in $1 million homes in Manhattan or luxury co-ops and whatnot. So right now you have a system of winners and losers, and working class, middle class people, a lot of immigrant families are paying too much while the rich are paying too little, and we are subsidizing them. I just want to level it out. I'm not saying that they need to feel pain. I'm saying everyone needs to pay their fair share. And if working middle class people have been paying too much for too long, then it's time for us to get a break. We need serious property tax reform.
To question on the similar topic, small business recovery and support. What do you mean by that? That's one question. And what's your plan? The other one is the minority-owned businesses and woman-owned businesses. You said you need to unlock. You need to unlock capital for New York City's minority community, woman-owned businesses. Please explain.
Sure. So small businesses, my wife and I used to own a small business. We owned a store for 10 years. My wife still owns a small business, but we closed the brick and mortar. Look, small businesses, a lot of politicians have these big ideas for small businesses, and I do too. I have a lot of big ideas for business too. But there's a lot of things we can be doing just to make life easier for small businesses. It shouldn't take 2 months to get an inspection to turn your gas stove on in a restaurant.
Right.
That is a perfect example of a place where we don't need more laws and more ideas.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure government is working efficiently.
We need cooperation.
We need cooperation and efficiency, and we can't have this dysfunctional government.
Right.
I think that we should give small business owners a tax break. If you're starting a new business, I would say the first 3 years of your business, you shouldn't have to pay business taxes. Let's see if you can survive on your own. Let's give you a chance to succeed.
Right.
And the same thing can be said about MWBEs.
Okay.
The reason why I believe MWBEs are not succeeding, even though we're setting them up with we're setting up very laudable goals. We want MWBEs to succeed, but we're not giving them the tools they need to compete. So when they're in the room with all these other big companies, they have no clothes. They're not ready to fight. They don't have what they need to succeed. And we're doing ourselves a disservice because we're setting up these great goals, but we're not giving them the tools they need to compete, and then they fail. And then we look worse because we're setting these goals for MWBEs and they're not reaching the goals. They need more access to credit and capital.
Small businesses, minority-owned businesses are in trouble with the current administration's tariff situation. It impacts them directly.
Tariffs hurt the poor first.
Okay. First. Second, the taxes are high. It costs them the business, and the mismanagement and the getting a ticket for not
just
having
little stuff. Yeah,
it doesn't help the business to grow. I would really, if you were to be elected, I would really say, please don't forget this part because it affects us
and so many in the immigrant community that came to this country to build a better life for their family. They're small business owners. They work hard.
Absolutely.
I believe. Look, if your business is not hurting someone or making someone sick or treating someone unfairly, the government should do nothing except help you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now we are towards the end of our program almost. Many who are watching today and will watch later on a social media, why would they vote you over a different candidate? Especially Bangladeshi American community who are watching today. What would you tell them?
It's a great question. Look, I am, what you see is what you get. If you ask me where I stand on something on Monday, you don't have to ask me again on Thursday. I stand where I stand. I've always believed what I believe. I don't change because, the wind blows and I change. I believe what I believe. I believe that working people in the city deserve to succeed, that everyone deserves equal application under the law, that everyone should be treated fairly, and that the city should be working as hard for you as you work for your family. And I represent I'm so proud to represent one of the largest Muslim communities in the city, and I've done everything I can to stand up in good times and bad, to be a leader, to listen, to always be listening and learning and pushing forward. I just want to build a better city so that I can leave the city better than how I found it, and that every kid and every family can have that same equal access to opportunity, to great parks, to great schools, and that all comes down to how we spend the money.
Yeah, and it's very important to understand that New York City is different from any other cities. Just like you said, we have Muslim population, we have Jewish population, we have the Christians, obviously, white Christians. Trump wants to make this country white Christian country. I'm sorry, not a bad joke. It's what he wants,
insane.
right? It's insane. So for us, there is no other way but to work together.
Yes.
And you are saying you are the guy who can actually do it and then unite everybody under one flag, saying we need to get better.
Yes,
we
as
need
New
to,
Yorkers.
in order to get better, we need to work together,
As New Yorkers.
right? Any last message that you want to send?
I appreciate this. This is a great opportunity. I thank you very much.
I'm going to let you go, but since you are a musician, maybe a line or two for us.
Then everyone will turn off their TV.
I tried.
Thank you. I
I tried. Justin,
Thank you so
once
much.
again, thank you for making time. I know this is the busiest time. People who are watching today, please understand the election is on June 24th, and Justin Brannan is running for a comptroller of New York City. Basically means he's going to be the managing and overseeing the finance of New York City. That actually has a big impact. So if you like him, after hearing what he had to say today, you can vote for him, or if you may not vote for him, but make sure you go and vote. Right. This is really important. Okay, so we are saying goodbye. শুভরাত্রি।
TBN 24 টেলিভিশন দেখতে আজই কল করুন 7187776556 লগ ইন করুন www.totalcablebd.com।
নিউ ইয়র্ক থেকে সম্প্রচারিত TBN 24 টেলিভিশন বিশ্বজুড়ে বাঙালির কণ্ঠস্বর।